The tribute demand that changed everything. The day the Federation of Allied Systems arrived was a day the history books would never forget. The morning had started like any other. Humans going about their daily routines, cities humming with life, space stations orbiting the planet in peaceful rotation. Then, without warning, the sky changed. They didn't come through the usual channels. There were no diplomatic signals, no pre-recorded warnings. One moment, the skies were clear, and the next, they were filled with ships. Massive, monolithic vessels, each one the size of an entire city, emerged from the void. Their metallic hulls blotted out the sun, casting Earth's landscapes into an artificial twilight. Their sheer scale dwarfed everything humanity had ever built. For 6 hours, they remained motionless, watching, waiting, silent. Then a message came. It wasn't broadcast on a single frequency. It was everywhere. It echoed across every communication device, televisions, radios, satellites, even digital billboards. Every human on Earth, in orbit, and even on Mars heard it at the same time. We are the Federation of Allied Systems. Your world has been identified as capable of joining our collective. Prepare to receive our representatives. There was no introduction, no request, no preamble. Just a statement of fact, as if Earth's fate had already been decided. The meeting of the United Earth Council. Beneath Washington, D.C., in a heavily fortified underground chamber, the United Earth Council convened in a state of emergency. The room was filled with tension and barely contained panic. Military leaders, top scientists, and world representatives sat around a massive holographic table. Above them, projections of the alien fleet hovered in ominous stillness. President Olivia Carter stood at the head of the table, her hands clasped tightly together. She had trained for crisis before, but nothing like this. General Ethan Roberts, the highest-ranking military official on Earth, leaned forward. His weathered face was grim, illuminated by the faint blue glow of the holograms. If they wanted us dead, we'd already be dead. His voice was steady, factual. He wasn't wrong. Dr. Marcus Adams, Earth's leading physicist, rubbed his temples as he studied the data from the ships. Their energy output is astronomical, he muttered. Far beyond anything we can generate. The room fell silent at those words. Then, an alert blared. The aliens have landed. The council members turned to the live feed. A silver alien shuttle was descending toward the National Mall in Washington, D.C. Its surface reflected the sunlight like a perfect mirror, its design eerily organic, as if the ship itself was alive. The world watched with bated breath. The Federation's arrival. The moment the shuttle touched the ground, its hull shifted, opening like a blooming flower. A delegation of alien figures emerged. They were humanoid, but taller, standing nearly 8 feet. Their skin had a metallic sheen. Their 4 eyes blinked independently, scanning their surroundings with clinical precision. Their movements were fluid, almost unnaturally smooth. The leader stepped forward. He was clad in ceremonial robes, lined with symbols humanity could not yet decipher. His presence was imposing yet effortless, the kind of confidence that came from absolute power. He spoke, his voice reverberating through every translator device, perfectly synchronized to every language on Earth. I am Admiral Valrus of the Federation of Allied Systems. Your civilization has demonstrated potential. You will now contribute to the Federation's prosperity. President Carter took a slow, measured breath before responding. We are open to peaceful discussions with all interstellar civilizations. Valrus's 4 eyes narrowed. This is not a negotiation. This is an acceptance. Earth will provide a yearly tribute of 30% of all its resources, minerals, water, biological materials. The room went cold. General Roberts stiffened. That would cripple our economy. Valrus's expression remained unmoved. That is not our concern. The Federation has incorporated thousands of worlds. Resistance is illogical. Dr. Adams stepped forward, brows furrowing. What if we refuse? Valrus let out a low, vibrating hum, perhaps amusement, perhaps irritation. Refusal would be unwise. We will return in 30 days. The tribute will begin. Failure to comply will result in immediate hostile action. Then, as quickly as they arrived, they turned and walked back toward their ship. Before stepping inside, Valrus paused and turned slightly. Oh, and don't bother hiding your resources in your Mars colonies or asteroid mining operations. We know about everything. With that, the shuttle sealed itself and lifted off, ascending toward the waiting fleet above. For the first time since their arrival, the alien vessels moved. They repositioned into a grid formation, covering every major population center, as if silently watching the planet below. Their message was clear. They expected compliance. The human response. As the alien fleet settled into orbit, Earth's leadership faced a grim choice. Options. President Carter demanded, turning toward General Roberts. The general didn't hesitate. They have overwhelming force. If we resist, they'll level our cities before we can even fire back. Dr. Adams spoke next, his fingers racing over a holographic display. But something doesn't add up. Carter's eyes narrowed. Explain. Adams turned the display toward the council. Their energy signatures. They're powerful, yes, but their efficiency is terrible. They're burning power like an outdated reactor. If their technology was so advanced, why would they need to strong-arm civilizations like this? A quiet realization spread through the room. They weren't here because they were infinitely powerful. They were here because they needed resources. Roberts caught on immediately. They're hiding something. Dr. Adams nodded. Their ships are huge, but their power fluctuations suggest they might not be as invincible as they seem. We need time to study them. President Carter exhaled, looking at the alien fleet above. Then we use the time they gave us. We have 30 days to prepare. We either find a way to fight back, or we find another way to make sure humanity survives. The decision was made. Across the world, scientists, engineers, and intelligence specialists mobilized, digging into every fragment of data about the alien fleet. They would not surrender. They would not comply. And if the Federation thought Earth would be just another obedient colony, they were about to learn the greatest mistake of their existence. Because the thing about humans was this: they never reacted the way anyone expected. The game humanity refused to play. The Federation of Allied Systems had made their demand. 30 days. That was all the time Earth had to surrender 30% of its resources, or suffer immediate hostile action. On the surface, it looked like humanity had no choice. A species standing at the doorstep of interstellar travel had no chance against a vast, galaxy-spanning empire. At least, that's what the Federation thought. The reality, however, was far more complicated. Because humanity was not like the thousands of civilizations that had bowed before the Federation before. And in the hidden depths of Earth's most secretive military and scientific facilities, they were about to prove it. The gathering of minds. In a classified underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, the brightest minds of Earth had gathered. Scientists, military strategists, intelligence analysts, and cyber warfare specialists sat around a vast holographic war table where detailed projections of the alien fleet flickered in cold blue light. The room was buzzing with tension. Data scrolled across holographic displays at impossible speeds as supercomputers processed every available bit of intelligence on the Federation's forces. At the head of the room, General Ethan Roberts stood with arms crossed. He was not a man prone to panic or rash decisions. He had fought in wars, commanded fleets, and planned entire defense strategies for the United Earth government. But this was something else. This is the biggest threat humanity has ever faced, he began, his voice calm but firm. And yet, something doesn't add up. Why send an entire fleet for a tribute demand? Why not just take what they want? Dr. Marcus Adams, Earth's leading physicist, leaned forward. Because they can't just take it. If they could, they would have already. He tapped the holographic projection, zooming in on the energy fluctuations from the Federation warships. Their ships are massive, yes. Their energy output is astronomical. But their efficiency is terrible. They're bleeding power in ways that don't make sense for a species that claims to have dominated thousands of worlds. A murmur ran through the room. So what does that mean? Someone asked. Dr. Adams turned to face the room, his expression sharp. It means they need this tribute more than they're letting on. The hidden weakness. Over the next 2 weeks, analysts and scientists worked around the clock. Every byte of data the Federation had exposed during their brief visit was dissected, analyzed, and simulated. And the findings were shocking. The Federation's energy systems were flawed. Despite their intimidating size, their ships functioned like a bloated, inefficient machine, one that required constant refueling just to keep operating. In other words, the Federation's fleet wasn't as invincible as it looked. The deception strategy. If we fight them conventionally, we lose. General Roberts stated the obvious. We don't have the numbers, the weapons, or the infrastructure for a straight war. But President Olivia Carter leaned forward. If we can make them believe we're stronger than we actually are. We flip the power dynamic, Dr. Adams finished. A plan began to form. One that required no battles, no fleets, no bloodshed. Only misinformation, manipulation, and deception. The grand illusion begins. Humanity had always been good at one thing, creating illusions. Now, they would use that skill to survive. Using advanced AI systems, they hacked into the Federation's observation networks, carefully feeding them false data about Earth's capabilities. They planted false military intelligence. That Earth had advanced planetary defense systems hidden deep underground. That they had experimental energy weapons capable of disabling warships in orbit. That they had off-world allies waiting in the shadows. And then, the most dangerous deception of all. That Earth had already developed its own fleet of interstellar warships. The Federation believed they were watching humanity. What they didn't realize was that humanity was watching them back and feeding them a lie. The mock tribute. As the 30-day deadline approached, the world held its breath. Would Earth surrender? Would they resist? The Federation, hovering above the planet like gods looking down on their subjects, waited for an answer. Then, on the morning of the deadline, a single response was transmitted across the stars. A holographic message sent directly to the Federation's command vessel, where Admiral Valorous and his high-ranking officers watched in quiet expectation. The screen flickered to life. President Olivia Carter appeared, standing in a vast chamber, flanked by holograms of warships, human warships. Massive, sleek, powerful. Behind her, holographic projections of Earth's supposed hidden defense systems flickered in the background. She smiled. To the Federation of Allied Systems, she began. We have reviewed your demand. A pause. Then she leaned forward, voice calm but unyielding. Our answer is simple. No. For the first time in Federation history, a tribute demand had been refused outright. Not negotiated. Not debated. Just rejected. The Federation officers stared at the screen in stunned silence. Admiral Valorous narrowed his 4 eyes. You realize what you're doing, human. President Carter didn't blink. Oh, I do. And so do you. She gestured behind her to the holographic warships, letting the illusion linger. You came here expecting submission, she continued. You expected us to kneel. But we don't kneel. We don't bow. And if you push us, the image of an Earth superweapon came to life on the screen, appearing to charge with devastating energy. We will respond accordingly. It was all fake. The warships, non-existent. The weapons, AI-generated illusions. The planetary defenses, clever camera tricks. But the Federation didn't know that. And they didn't want to risk finding out. Admiral Valorous' expression darkened. You would dare threaten the Federation? President Carter tilted her head slightly, her smile never fading. Would you dare find out if it's real? A long, tense silence followed. The Federation officers whispered among themselves, scanning their long-range sensors, desperately looking for evidence of deception. But the data had been manipulated too well. Finally, Valrus exhaled. "You are playing a dangerous game, human." Carter smiled. "So are you." The transmission ended. The aftermath. For 3 days, the Federation fleet remained motionless in orbit. Then, one by one, their colossal warships began to move. Without firing a shot, without making another demand, the Federation withdrew from Earth. And the galaxy would never be the same. The message that shook the stars. The Federation's retreat sent shockwaves across the galactic community. For centuries, no species had ever refused a tribute demand. No species had ever dared to defy the Federation. And yet, humanity had done both. With nothing but misdirection and audacity, they had forced the greatest empire in the galaxy to back down. Across the stars, whispers began to spread. The Federation's power wasn't absolute. The humans were not to be underestimated. And for the first time in history, the galaxy had found something even more terrifying than the Federation, a species that refused to play by the rules. The bluff that broke an empire. The Federation of Allied Systems had never faced outright defiance before. For centuries, they had traveled from world to world, issuing their tribute demands. Some species resisted at first, but eventually they all gave in. Some were crushed, others were economically strangled into submission. None had ever dared to simply say no. And yet here was humanity, staring them down with a smug confidence that no species should have against a galactic empire. The holographic images of human warships, the advanced planetary defense grid, the prototype energy weapons, it all looked real. Too real to dismiss. Now, the Federation's greatest war strategists sat in silence aboard their massive flagship, Sovereign Will, trying to determine the truth. Had humanity truly hidden an interstellar fleet? Had they really developed weapons capable of countering the Dominion's military? Or had they been deceived? Admiral Valrus sat at the head of the Federation War Council, his 4 eyes narrowing as he analyzed every data stream. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered, studying the tactical assessments. "Their level of technology should be centuries behind us. How could they have developed such weapons without our knowledge?" Silence filled the war room. Finally, General Kellen, his second in command, cleared his throat. "Perhaps." He hesitated. "Perhaps they haven't." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Admiral Valrus snapped his gaze toward him. "Explain." Kellen hesitated again, knowing full well that what he was about to suggest could cost him his career. "What if?" He swallowed hard. "What if they are lying?" The room remained dead silent. Then, laughter. Cold, mechanical, bitter laughter. Admiral Valrus' metallic hand clenched into a fist. "You think an entire planet-wide military deception is possible? Do you have any idea how absurd that sounds?" But the thought had been spoken aloud now, and the doubt began to creep into the minds of the officers. What if it was a bluff? What if they were about to commit their forces to a war against an enemy that had nothing but tricks? Valrus turned to his lead intelligence officer, a tall reptilian figure named Director Elvos. "Do we have any confirmation of the existence of these weapons? Their fleet?" Elvos hesitated. "Sir, their communications networks are unusually encrypted, and all scans of their military bases confirm some level of high-energy weaponry, but we cannot determine if they are the same as what was shown in a holographic display." Valrus felt his patience thinning. "You mean to tell me that we, an empire spanning thousands of worlds, have no conclusive intelligence on a single backwater species?" Elvos stiffened. "Sir, their electronic warfare capabilities are surprising." And that was the problem. The humans were not acting like a lesser species. They were not begging for mercy. They were not offering negotiations. They were not even trying to buy more time. They were mocking the Federation to its face. And the worst part, it was working. The galaxy watches. Across the galaxy, the standoff between the Federation's fleet and Earth had become the most watched event in modern history. For decades, species under Federation rule had whispered about rebellion. They had longed for the strength to resist, but fear always kept them in line. Now, they watched as humanity, alone, without allies, stood defiantly against the greatest empire in the known universe. And the Federation was hesitating. Rebel groups across dozens of worlds took notice. On the war-torn slave colony of Drakenivhi, insurgent leaders studied Earth's tactics with wide-eyed admiration. On the industrial world of Torvax Prime, factory workers whispered in the dark, wondering if their planet could do the same. Even in the Federation's inner council, some senators, long tired of the Empire's authoritarian rule, began to ask dangerous questions. If humans could stand up to the Federation, what was stopping everyone else? The Federation's power begins to crack. Admiral Valrus knew he had two options: call the human bluff and risk a disastrous war if the weapons were real. Retreat and risk looking weak in front of the entire galaxy. Both choices had catastrophic consequences. He had to be sure. Deploy scout ships, he ordered. Scan their military installations again. If they have these weapons, we will find proof. His officers saluted and moved quickly to execute the command. But what Valrus didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that Earth was already one step ahead. The moment the Federation deployed their scout ships, the true genius of humanity's deception unfolded. The greatest trick in galactic history. The moment Federation scout ships approached Earth's military bases, they were met with counter-hacking protocols so aggressive that their own ship's sensors began feeding them fabricated data. Instead of seeing empty testing grounds, they saw gigantic planetary railguns, fully armed, stealth bombers preparing for launch, orbital defense satellites powering up their systems, artificial readings of wormhole-capable battlecruisers ready for deployment. None of it was real. But the Federation had no way to know that. When the scout ships returned with their findings, Admiral Valrus analyzed the reports. His fists tightened. The humans weren't bluffing. Or at least, it didn't look like they were. Valrus turned to General Killen. His voice was low and controlled. If we attack them, do we have a 100% chance of victory? Killen hesitated. No, sir. Too many unknowns. That hesitation sealed the decision. No matter how much Valrus wanted to crush humanity, he couldn't risk losing. A single defeat, even a small one, would shatter the Federation's illusion of dominance. And so, after 30 hours of silent deliberation, the order was given. The Federation's fleet turned away from Earth. They left without a word, without firing a single shot. The shockwave across the stars. The moment the Federation retreated, the galaxy erupted. Planets that had been under Imperial control for centuries suddenly saw a weakness in their overlords. Rebellions ignited in 6 different sectors. The Federation's own officers began questioning their leaders. For the first time in history, the Empire looked vulnerable. And the reason? A single species that had dared to stand its ground. Back on Earth, in the United Earth Government's war room, the moment the Federation fleet disappeared from their monitors, the room erupted in cheers. Scientists, analysts, and military officers hugged one another. General Roberts turned to President Carter, a slow grin forming. "You really pulled it off." Carter exhaled, shaking her head. "Not me. All of us." Dr. Adams smirked. "So, what do we do now?" Carter leaned forward, smiling at the stars. "Now," she said, "now we prepare, because the Federation will be back. And next time, we won't need to bluff."